My name is Heather, and I'm going to talk with you about UVW mapping a little bit. Here we can see that I already have created two cubes. This one is your standard primitive object created from the little Create tab here, and this one has been extruded from a shape of the same exact size as you can see from my overhead view. Now, you're going to notice the difference right away. I have this cube on this side with the built-in coordinate system that comes with any primitive shape in the program. And then I have this cube that has something kind of funky going on with it. Due to the extrusion, we have this kind of stretching on the sides and an even surface on the top, which is kind of weird. This is where being able to edit our UVW mapping comes in handy. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to show you a modifier. The Unwrap UVW Modifier is quite an interesting tool in the fact that it allows you to take the faces of your object and align them over top of some kind of texture visually in this kind of situation. Now, in this case, I have all of my faces by default kind of stacked up on top of each other. Not very helpful. Looking back again at our first example, we use the texture of the checker pattern to check for stretching in our model, which, like in this example, was very apparent because you can see which squares are perfectly square and which are skewed in some manner. It doesn't matter what kind of model you're working with, the checker pattern can be very handy. Our final pattern, however, I'd like to work with the little dice pattern that I created in Photoshop, and we'll show you exactly how we got that going on. Now, normally it would be a disaster, say if I turn off the UVW modifier here, and I render out this lovely monstrosity, which is happening because of our uneven mapping that we've already discovered. So to fix that, first I apply the modifier, then I pop it open here. I'm going to select the faces. Now, in this particular case and many cases, you can simply select a bunch of faces and tell the program to flatten it on its own. I'm going to leave the default values in place, and the end result is that it's taken all 6 faces of this cube and flattened it into something manageable for me. It's packed it in here really tight because it's important to use the least amount of space when you're doing these sorts of maps for, of course, system performance reasons. So I've crunched all of my faces in here very easily with the program. Sometimes that won't work, and you'll actually have to select each face or groups of faces manually and flatten them and arrange them in such a way. But for the purpose of this example, we're just going to go with the quick and easy route. Now, once you do have a template in place that's going to work for you, like in this case we have everything flat and nothing is overlapping, you can go and save your UVs into a separate file that you can access at any time, which is handy in case you may lose your UVW mapping modifier or something crazy like that happens. You can always load up your UVs again without having to manually set them all up. Now, that comes in handy when you're doing a lot of custom stuff in this area. You can weld a bunch of vertices and stitch a bunch of things together in different ways than the program is doing itself. We won't go into that today, but just so that you're aware, if you do a lot of manual work in here and you want to make sure you don't lose it, you can save it very easily. Now, also, I can render a template, which I'm going to do. Since I'm working with a relatively small object, I'm just going to make a 512 by 512 template, and there it is. Now I just click the save button and I save it wherever I want to. Here I've already saved my template, as you can see, so I'm not going to worry about it so much. Then you pop into Photoshop here. What I originally have is my template here in a file. You'll see my little lines. Generally, I come in and I adjust the opacity in some way so that I can see, as I'm working over top of it, what's happening with my borders. You always want to try to color over top of your borders just a little bit at least, because you don't want some kind of strange white or black or whatever showing up on your edges if the map happens to pull in a strange way. So make sure that you're kind of compensating. A lot of times people will put the background color of your image at the end, like say this whole image would be green at the end just to cover the possibility of any of that happening with the edges of the image showing. So anyhow, once I do have my template drawn up, and here it is, the final product, I've saved it as a JPEG, and you can't see the borders anymore. That's also very important. When you save, you don't want the borders to be visible because they will be visible when you map your object again. Now I'm going to go ahead and apply this texture, and in order for it to show up here I have to reset my texture list, and you will notice that I have my texture which I can choose. I can drag my faces around as I need to. Since I've already painted over top of my template, I don't have to do anything strange like that. Everything's already set up, and as you can see when I render, I have this wonderful dice sitting here. Now again, the UVW map modifier has helped me out with that. The Unwrap basically pulls all the sides of the cube apart and lays them flat for me. You can do this in a variety of ways manually as well, as I mentioned, but this is just a basic example of how UVW mapping works and how the Unwrap UVW modifier in specific is helpful in situations. Like I said, remember, without the modifier we have this monstrosity. With the modifier we can effectively control how the map reacts with the